Without a doubt, one of the most difficult things to make selections of are soft, fuzzy edges like hair. In CS5, though, we've got a revamped Refine Edges tool that is a huge leap forward. I'm so excited to show you this. Let's open up a file in our Chapter 13 folder. We'll select Hair. Notice in our Layers panel, we have two layers. What we'd like to do is replace this white layer on which the child was photographed with our layer number 2, this sand. That'll be a much nicer effect. In an earlier chapter, we saw how easy it was to create selections with the Quick Selection tool, so let's start there. The keyboard shortcut is W for this tool. I'm going to increase my brush size significantly. Right bracket key is the shortcut. Now we want to select the child, but in this instance, it's going to be much faster if we select the background. I'm simply going to click and paint, and click and paint again, and now I've got a very rough selection in only 2 clicks. Let's zoom in here on the face and check out what's happening with the hair. I'm going to reduce my brush size. I want to modify my initial selection, so I'm going to hold down the Option key on the Mac, the Alt key on the PC, and simply paint along some of these hair edges. We don't need to include every single strand, but we do want to avoid the dreaded helmet hair. Get this last one down here. That's pretty good for a rough selection. I'll zoom back out. Now keep in mind, we selected the background, but what we really want to select is the child. So in the Select menu, we select Inverse. That inverts our selection, and now our child is selected, and now we're ready for our visit to the Refined Edge tool. Now, a few things I want to show you here before we get started. The first thing is that we've got a lot of view options here under View mode. We can choose to show the image in its marching ants mode. We can see an overlay. We could view it over black. We could view it over white. But the most useful view when you've already got a bottom layer is to choose the On Layers option. This lets you see your selection directly against the background that you're trying to match it to. We're going to work with this tool by zooming into the image at a 100% view. Very crucial to be able to see exactly what you're doing. And before we get to the hair, I want to focus on the body here. We want to make sure that we've got a good selection around these harder edges. Let's start in the Adjust Edge box. We've got a smooth slider, and right now the edge of his arm is a little bit harsh against that sand. So we're going to bump the smooth slider up maybe to about 5 or 6. That gives us a much more believable and natural edge against that sand. Feathering can be useful. If you need to feather your initial selection here, you can see it's giving us a halo, so we're not going to find that useful in this image. The contrast slider will increase the contrast along your edges, and that we don't want to do. We're actually smoothing those edges. Now, if your initial selection is either too tight or not tight enough, you can use this Shift Edge slider, drag it to the left, and your selection will move inward. Drag it to the right, and your selection moves out. We're pretty good at 0. Now I want to show you the most exciting addition to Refine Edge. It is the Refine Radius tool. This tool is going to allow us to intelligently mask out areas of this top layer. So I'm going to scroll back up here to the hair. I'm going to turn on the Smart Radius box. On an older computer, this may slow you down a bit, but it gives you a much more precise result. I'm going to bump up my radius here to just about 1 pixel. And now what I'm going to do is simply paint over these white areas to allow the bottom layer to show through. And look at that. If you're a retoucher, you've probably just fallen out of your chair. This used to be very, very tedious work that could easily take up the better part of an afternoon, but all I have to do is click and drag with this brush. And Photoshop is automatically noting the difference between the hair and the background and allowing the background to show through to the bottom layer. This is really fantastic. I mean, this feature alone is worth the upgrade to CS5, and if you do any sort of retouching, this will pay for itself the very first time you use it. I'll get this spot down in here, and I'm not really having to be even that precise because Photoshop is doing such a great job of making a distinction between the hair and the white background. Now here's another great new addition to Refine Edge. Right now, all we've done is make a selection. We're seeing a preview of how it would look if it was masked, but right now we just have a selection. Under Output, we can choose whether we want this to remain a selection or to automatically create a layer mask. We could create a brand new layer with or without a layer mask. We could even make a new document that would have this layer mask. Extremely helpful options here. This will speed up your workflow significantly. We are going to choose the layer mask option. I'll point out here we have a Remember Settings button. If you check this, the next time you open Refine Edge, it will have these identical settings. So let's just hit OK. And now you can see we've got a very, very nice selection. It's not 100% perfect. We could do a little touch-up work on that mask, but for a few seconds worth of work, it's pretty phenomenal.